Shalom, Apostle Taha, coming back at you with this truth, giving all praises to Yahweh by Qam Yasharahla, by Qam Kodash. And I'm going to entitle this video, Eat This Roll and Go Out and Teach the Sons of Israel. Now that's, I'm making that statement. It's basically a quote from Ezekiel, the third chapter, where the Most High came to Ezekiel, the prophet Ezekiel, and the Most High is dealing with the prophets. The people that the Most High is dealing with right now, directly through the Spirit, are the prophets, not kings or captains or generals or priests. Even though we do priestly duties, you know, we deal with the Passover and the High Holy Days, and you go through the ceremony with the Torah and the blessing and so forth. So that same man that does it is also supposed to be a prophet first and foremost. And if you're a prophet, you're supposed to prophesy. You're supposed to say, same thing with a preacher. The word preacher, and I said this a bunch of times, the word preacher translates into the word prophet. So the only preacher out there is a prophet. So now if you're a prophet and the Most High is raising up the prophets, apostle is another word for prophet, teachers, because in order for you to teach the scriptures, you have to be a prophet. But why? Because somebody's going to ask you, what does this scripture mean? What does this mean in Daniel, the 2nd chapter? Or what does that mean in Revelation 11th chapter and whatever verse? So when you tell them what it means, you're giving them prophecies. So even teachers in this truth under the Most High are are prophets. It all goes back to prophets. Anyway, what I did was I went to my page and I went to the search engine and I believe I put in Revelation. I think I put in Revelation. And this is what popped up. And, all of you have to know all the prophecies. You have to know the entire book of Revelation. You have to know the entire book, or you're supposed to know the entire book of Daniel. And mainly, if you don't know the whole book, ultimately you're supposed to understand the whole book. And we don't always put out all the prophecies. It comes when the Spirit hits us. So there's some chapters that we haven't really gone into, or maybe we've gone into it years ago and never brought it back, but that's through the Spirit. But the main prophecies that we're supposed to bring out are prophecies that are taking place now and are about to take place. That's why we always mention the mark of the beast being the microchip, and the mark of the beast is the microchip. If you can't see it, the Most High didn't open up your eyes. I'm just going to tell you just like it is. Anyway, I put in Revelation, and this is what popped up in my search engine. The first video that came up is Revelation chapter 8 and 9, the breakdown part 1. This was 3 years ago. Revelation chapter 11. This was put up 2 years ago. And I got to go back and just watch these, just to watch them. Revelation, and then you should understand these scriptures. You should understand these breakdowns, even if you hadn't went through this in years. This is supposed to be in your mind. Somebody, comes out that went to church and asks you something concerning Revelations, the 17th chapter. You should have the answers. Why? Because you went through it before. You were taught it by teachers over you. And when you don't remember it, that's a bad look. Now, I'm not saying you have to know. You might have a guy read First Maccabees and Second Maccabees and ask you a question concerning Judas Maccabees. It could be deep into the first Maccabees. It could be maybe, I don't know, it could be chapter 4, chapter 5, and ask you a specific thing. Well, it's impossible for you to know that, because if you hadn't gone through that, you won't know the answer. Like in the book of Jonah. Jonah, I believe that's 4 chapters long. Now, somebody could just had finished going through the book of Jonah and maybe in the 2nd chapter ask you a question, let's say in the 10th verse. You know, I'm just throwing it out there. And you might give a general answer. You know? The Most High doesn't expect us to memorize the book word for word, because it's impossible. But when somebody brings out First Chronicles, the 1st chapter, the 2nd chapter, and so forth, you know that's a genealogy that goes into the nations. It's basically another table of nations. Then it goes into the accounts of the kings and the prophets. So you don't have to know every aspect of, First Chronicles, the 1st chapter, First Chronicles, the 2nd chapter. You don't have to, but you have to have some kind of idea. You know, what does the word chronicles mean? It means a record. It's from the Greek chronos, which means time, or a record, a history. You should know Genesis 1, Genesis 2, Genesis 3, Genesis 4, Genesis 5. Then beyond that, you basically have the accounts of Noah, and you have the history, and you have the Most High creating the children of Israel. At first, they were called the sons of the Most High, the sons of God, the sons of the power. So we don't expect you to know everything, but the breakdowns, you got to know these breakdowns, man. You got to know these prophecies. And I'm always hitting prophecies. Last week, we spoke about a lot of prophecies. The week before that, we spoke about a lot of prophecies, because these things are coming to pass. And, if you're part of the New York camp, I'm a little bit harsher with y'all. We go out there. I set up the camps. Now you got 8 men to each camp. Some camps you have maybe 12 or 13 men. And, through the Spirit, you're going to always have people that's on fire, and then you're going to have people that are not as on fire as the other people in the camp. So, and then that it stagnates. It stagnates you, because you're leaning on a guy that knows this. Well, I'm going to lean on him. Well, you got to get it for yourself, man. It speaks about being on the same level as far as diligence is concerned. You supposed to all, if I'm a scholar, if I'm a top teacher, well, you that been in this thing for 3 years, you should be a top teacher too. Whatever person comes up and asks a question to me, they should ask, and I give them an answer, the correct answer. They should ask you that same question, and you supposed to give them that answer. Especially if you've been in this thing for a year or 2 years. Some guys will say, "Well, I only came in this thing 6 months." Well, you know what? You're supposed to know a lot in 6 months. Your attitude is not supposed to be, "Well, I'll wait till the Spirit hits me." Anyway, I'm just showing you right here. You got Revelation 8 verse 9, Revelation chapter 11, and I could have put in Daniel or Ezekiel or Obadiah or any Zechariah. And you're supposed to understand all those breakdowns. You're supposed to understand all the prophecies and the scriptures as a whole. You're supposed to have a general knowledge of the scriptures and the history. Like if somebody asks you to recite the genealogy from King David down to Yahushua, who does that? But you're supposed to know that, well, King David was of the tribe of Judah. Yahushua was of the tribe of Judah, and he came from the direct lineage of King David, King Solomon, by his father Joseph. And that's something that the Christians and the Catholics can't understand. Even when you explain it to them, they can't see it. Anyway, and you know, people are coming to, a lot of Edomites, a lot of scholars and a lot of pastors and ministers. They're watching our videos and they're learning certain things, but they're going to kind of bring it out their own way, like they figured it out, or like the Most High is dealing with them. The Most High is not dealing with them. Revelation, the 17th chapter, a complete breakdown. Revelation, the great multitude in Revelation 7 are Israelites. The Revelation chapter 8 and 9. So you have all these videos that I put up, and I can go on and on. And I did it because I understood it, because I learned it from High Priest Ariah, and I studied it. And Ariah never really got into the mark of the beast because that wasn't talked about back then. Although I knew about the mark of the beast, and I read it in the book of Revelation, the 13th chapter, it wasn't really pushed, but now it's being pushed damn near every time I speak. I'm gonna mention it some kind of way. If I don't mention it in one video, I'll mention it in another video. And you notice that you have camps that can't see it, and they buck up against us because we're teaching it, and they're trying to figure it out. They'll go to the mark in Revelation 13, then they'll go to the word mark in Romans 16. What is that? Romans chapter 16, about mark them. Then they'll go into there's another word, Ezekiel 9 and 4 on down, so the mark on them. Then they'll say, well, they'll equate all those three words or four words, mark, found in the different parts of the scriptures, and equate it to the same thing. No, that's when you go into the Hebrew. In Ezekiel 9 and 4, what is it, 9, the 4th or the 5th verse, or the 4th verse, it says, set a mark upon the men that sigh and cry. So when you look at, now you got to go into the Hebrew. What does it mean by mark? Well, the word is thawa. Putting a mark on your flesh, like a tattoo or cuttings in your flesh. In the Old Testament, in the law, that word is, what is that? I believe it's quite, if I'm not mistaken. I got to look it up. Which means an actual mark. Then, which based upon that, putting a chip in you, you'd have to open up your skin. Put no cuttings in your flesh. Put no markings in your flesh. Now the word mark in Revelation, the 13th chapter, which speaks about the mark of the beast, the word there is karagma, which goes back to the word karax. So if you don't understand that and you can't see that, then you don't understand Revelation, the 13th chapter. And I keep saying the same thing. If I sound like a broken record, well, you just got to deal with it. You got this. The Apostle Paul spoke about growing in this thing. You're supposed to grow. If you come in this thing 6 months, we expect a certain amount of something out of you. A year later, or 6 months later, which is a year later, we expect you to be no more than you did 6 months ago. 2, 3, 4 years later, 5 years later, we expect you to be at top through the Spirit of the Most High, because we're over you. You know, we expect what the Most High expects. You know, we're not dealing with guys that's just going to come around and put their hands in their pockets and, you know, you speak when somebody go, okay, brother, you going up and speak. And you really don't want to speak, but you speak because somebody over you told you to. No, you got to come in the spirit, man. You got to be, you don't have to yell at the top of your lungs, but you got to teach. Stop going through the motions. Like I said, I'm a little bit more hard and stringent with y'all. It's more of a go to camp, teach, do the lineup, whatever things, news or whatever information that we got to give you, we give it to you quick. We salute out and we go. Oh, there was a story, and I believe it was Tazadakia, if I'm not mistaken, when the split came, the major split came from One West. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it was Tazadakia and another brother that they were cool with each other. It could have been two other brothers, but they were like you know, David and who was that? Jonathan, the son of Saul. And they were knitted to each other. You know how you have a friend that's real close to you, like a brother, or closer than a brother. And if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, I believe Tazadakia, the so-called comforter, was one of the guys, because he wasn't no top guy, he was just a teacher. And what happened was when the split came, those two guys that were so close, one guy said, I'm going with King Mashar. And the other guy said, I'm staying with the main school. So when they looked at each other, they got into a fist fight and it was broken up. Them spirits were like active, man. So these guys basically like thought the same, were cool with each other, hung out, called each other. You know, you was cool, that's your boy right there, right? And when that split came, that showed you how the spirit worked. And there was a lot of, there was some people that you thought were gonna go with this split or this group instead of that group. So, you know, it's all spiritual, man. Everything's spiritual. And, you know, we know what happened to, you know, where Tazadakia is now, if he's that one of those guys. But it shows you the seriousness of this truth and the mindset of individuals, man. And there's a reason why you have guys watch videos and get with IUIC, and then some guys get with ISUPK, and then some guys get with GMS, and some guys get with any HODC or any of them other groups. It was all through the spirit. So we don't, you know, when you come into this thing, when you are part of GMS, you're here to work. You're here to grow in this thing. You're here to get better. You're here to know more scriptures. If you knew X amount of scriptures your first 6 months, you should know that much more a year later, 2 years later. 5 years later, you're supposed to be on the you should, nobody should have to teach you. You know? Anyway, with that, I'm going to say shalom, and it's on to the next one. Shalom.